Morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right. Welcome to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist. I don't think we can turn it off that much, Terry. People can't hear. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church. Let's try this again. Good morning. All right, yay, now we're awake. I'm Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and her, and we are so glad to have you, whether you're here because you haven't been here in a while physically. We're grateful to have you. If you're online with us, we're grateful to have you. If you're watching this later when you're folding the laundry, we're glad you're here. So we are just glad that you are connecting with your church community. No, you do not have to believe a creed to be comfortable among us. So if you're visiting, we would love to talk to you more about the beliefs which we covenant to affirm and promote. And you can also see them on our website, where you can fill out a virtual visitor's card. If you're here on campus today, you can also do that at the table, which will be a striped umbrella right against the wall after the service, where you can do that after the service. We are really glad to talk to you, any of us, about who we are and what we believe, and we look forward to learning more about you. Today we have a lot going on. We have our virtual coffee hour, which will be at 11:45 today, and then we have our forum will be released. It's actually going to be a recorded forum, and it will be released around noon to members. You should have an email. You can go and watch it at any time. It's also posted in the member forum, so please do please do listen to that message from the board. We have our presentation on the Eurostat and our responsibilities to them today, which will be happening this afternoon. And we have our Bid for Love table to make your donations. So what do we need for Bid for Love? Donate now. Our very fearless volunteers are saying, let's hear that. 1, 2, 3. Donate now. Yes, that's what we need for Bid for Love. We are also this week launching our Connect groups and our community circles. And the 50 plus people that participated in our first round of Connect groups really enjoyed them. And we really think this is a great way for people to be back in touch and having conversations with one another. So please do check that out. You'll be getting an email early in the week about that. You can find out more about all the things that we're doing on mduc.org and our virtual calendar under the News tab, where you can get links and register for events. And we're so grateful for all of you who are registering, especially for worship and our larger events, because it helps us know how many chairs we need to set. It's very helpful. If you didn't, you are now completely absolved. No worries. We'd rather have you than have you registered, but if you can, please register. It is still a time when many are under various pressures and transitions, and so please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to our intern minister, Michael Macias, if you could use a listening ear or financial assistance. Asking is a gift you give to our community, and welcome. We are glad to have you at this beloved community.
Good morning. There we go. Yay. Good morning. I'm Chris Carter, a member of your Board of Trustees. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming faith community. We begin our services by reading our mission together. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, religions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. Welcome to our service. I want to say again that we are glad to have you with us, whether you are on campus, on a screen, or watching us later this week. Please note that this afternoon, members will receive an email which will provide a link to our virtual forum, which will be available after noontime today, as Leslie referenced earlier. Also, please mark your calendar for the morning of October 30th with a congregational conversation on widening the circle, featuring a discussion on our work to become more welcoming to those with disabilities, as well as small group breakout. Please stay connected. Each week, this community offers many ways to connect with each other and to grow our spirits and our connections. You can learn more at our mduuc.org website or by being sure to subscribe to our email lists. In these ever-challenging times, we are here for one another. And welcome. It's good to be together.
All right, we're going to invite you to clap along and to enter this space. Come and go with me to that land. 2, 1, 2, 3. Come and go with me to that land. Come go with me to that land. Go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. Freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. Be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. With me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound.
Good morning. I'm Peggy Kroll. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm thrilled to be doing the chalice this morning. I have to tell you how this service comes about. Part of our bid for love is to ask Reverend Leslie to do a sermon. So the sermon I asked her to create is about living small on this planet. So you know how creative this is going to be. So you probably have seen some photos of me living in a tent or in a canoe or a tiny house I have in Colorado. So I know it'll be fun, and I know you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to share some words. Reverend Rodney's going to light the chalice for me. I'm going to share some words from the Dalai Lama. If one's life is simple, contentment has to come. Simplicity is extremely important for happiness. Having few desires, feeling satisfied with what you have is very vital. Satisfaction with just enough food, clothing, and shelter to protect you from the elements. Let it be so.
Good morning. My name is Indigo Lewis. I'm the Director for Lifespan Religious Education here at Mount Diablo UU Congregation. And we've got some friends who are joining us for our story this morning. Oop, there goes the story. Okay. Now, the topic of today is small. So we have some friends, but they are small friends, if you can see. Hi, MDUUC. I am Ace, and I'm an alligator, just in case you couldn't tell. Hey, I bet you're wondering how I knew I was at church this morning. Well, unlike some of my larger relatives, you might have missed me because I'm a little smaller than most. But this church is my church too. In fact, I've got some friends who usually join me, and they're walking up right now. Rocky, Babbitt, over here, come join me.
I'm so excited we made it to church this morning, and the service topic is all about us. Yes, right in the Friday email, it said Sunday service is all about how small is beautiful, and we are the smallest things around, so it must be about us. No, Rocky, it's about the beauty of a small life, not small animals, though we are pretty special. I don't understand.
Well, Rocky, I think it's like this. The small choices that we make in life are important too. For instance, I'm worried about all the plastic that makes its way to the ocean. So I wash all the plastic bags from the grocery store and keep them to store food in the refrigerator. And when they get empty, I wash them again.
Well, we raccoons are often thought of as bandits, so I could just start stealing small things.
I don't think you have this idea yet. No.
Oh, okay, well, I could practice small choices as well. It bothers me that so many of my favorite drinks like iced tea and milk come in plastic bottles. I could try to find drinks that, come in cans or cartons. I think I get this. Well, I want to make a small choice too. I could
Ride your bike.
pick up litter.
Turn down the AC.
Wait, those are good suggestions, but my small choice is...
Hey, you two. Sounds like it's time for worship, and we don't want to be late.
Yeah, last time you got stuck in the back and I couldn't see a thing because I'm so short. Rocky, could you tell us afterward? Hey, wait, a small thing you could do is listen to me.
Oh, that is true. What is your idea?
I could find a smaller log to live in and give up some of the things I have, less stuff.
Closer, buddy. You're getting closer. Now we would Now we would like to invite all of our children to join us in their activities, and Mark will sing us out.
Go in love, our hearts go with you. Go enjoy your, go to learn in love and grow in wisdom. Shine your light in all you do.
Good morning. It's so good to see actual people here. It starts small. I awake to a sound similar to a rusted engine turning over as it starts its day. I hear that sound, and I nudge the body next to me so that it halts and I can return to slumber. An interesting paradox in life is that change is really the only constant. What might frustrate us one day could soothe our souls the next, and vice versa. Our world seems to shift, sometimes slowly and other times violently, but no matter the speed, nothing is promised and everything remains possible. A paradox. When I feel the overwhelm of being in a global pandemic for almost 2 years and traversing now multiple near-death encounters with my husband, all of the things that normally brought me comfort seem almost meaningless. My house, our home, seems unnecessarily too large, and I find my mind wanting something more right-sized. Our 2 gas-guzzling cars have recently been reduced to a single hybrid vehicle. Yes, green people, we have not gone electric yet, but we're moving in the right direction. Just in case you wanted to talk to me afterwards. And a push for corporate recognition and scientific accolades has been exchanged for a life of service to something beyond ourselves. There is a power in recognizing and appreciating the small things in our lives. It is a practice of gratitude that can be sustaining and healing in these difficult times. This concept of focusing our appreciation and energy on the smaller things in our lives is not a new one. I remember a passage from the Christian scriptures where Rabbi Jesus was explaining the importance of prayer practice and how to do it. He also shared a very simple caution to the group gathered. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. To me, this is a warning for all of us that our efforts for reconciliation, repair, and restoration can only happen if our heart's intent and focus are collective and together. It won't be through amassing wealth, though wealth does make things easier, or homes or cars, but instead, true treasure will only be found in the cultivation of the small acts of kindness between us. A smile, a shared meal, a kind word, a listening ear. All of these are examples of how the small things in life can have overwhelmingly positive effects on our world. I really genuinely pray that we can all find a way to be with one another in these small, meaningful ways, as a practice of sustaining our connection and relationship and cultivating love. It starts small. Sounds similar to a rusted engine turning over as the day starts. I relish in its beauty. I feel so safe and secure now, mostly because I am reminded that there is still breath traveling through the insides of the person I love. the breath of life that remains strong enough to agitate me from slumber, still somehow soothes me back to sleep.
We're going to invite you to rise and body your spirit and be in active listening for our opening song. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. Thank you.
This is the time in our service when we take into the loving embrace of this community those joys and sorrows that are too great to hold alone. And I want to light our first candle today for all of those whose personal heritage had them celebrating and mourning on Indigenous Peoples Day this last week. And I also want to light a candle for our member Denise Varner, who is moving out of the area and who has taught us so much over the years about her Indigenous experience and roots. I'm also lighting a candle for Marnie Parker, who is on the way to her new place of living, who is also moving from our area this week as well. And Sarah Patton asked that we light a candle today. She writes, "Soon I will live much closer to my parents and friends in the Sacramento town area, but I will no longer be physically close to the Diablo Valley, some family, friends, my beloved neighbors, and neighborhood and MDUUC's campus and community members." And Sarah's with us here today, and we're grateful for that as well. I am lighting a candle for my mother, Arlie, whose birthday is tomorrow. Her health has been very fragile for the last months, and especially fragile over the last few days. And Reverend Rodney is lighting a candle today, and he shares that Errol continues to heal, and it has been a week of many ups and downs. So Rodney asks that perhaps you give him just a little bit of space today and refrain from personal asking about the situation so that he can be more present among us today. I ask Reverend Rodney to light 2 candles today, one for those whose joys and sorrows remain unexpressed in words, but which we are holding in our hearts as well, and one to hold our dreams and wishes and hopes for this one imperfect but precious world in which we live.
Still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears through all the years, singing.
Because Peggy gave us the charge of celebrating small things today, it was a great excuse for me to think about haiku as meditation, one of my favorite small forms. So I invite us to just take a breath, to come into this place, and to be present. It is such a gift to be together however we may be so. And let us be aware of wherever we actually are for this moment. If we are home in front of a screen, let us actually be present to the place that we call home. If we are here in the sanctuary, let us let every opportunity that we have during this hour together to be one to reflect on how grateful we are to be gathered. I'm going to share 3 haiku, and then we're going to have a time of silence. And I invite you in your own mind not to worry so much about the form, but just to think about one small thing that has brought you pleasure this week. Perhaps one small thing that has reminded you of what is important. Fading morning stars, you link the night to day and whisper eternity. Cherish the blade of grass and the breathing tree, and daily choose to preserve life. A drop of dew holds the world, and in each face holds all humanity. Now I invite you to cherish your own small moment of connection and meaning from this week. Thank you for the gift of sharing silence together and for all that brings and connects us to.
Place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got. Now listen to the top where the little birds sing, and the melodies and the high notes ring, and the hoot owl cries over everything, and the blackbird disagrees. Singing in the nighttime, singing in the day, and the little duck quacks and he's on his way, and the otter hasn't got much to say, and the porcupine talks to himself. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got. Now the dogs and the cats, they take up the middle where the honeybee hums and the cricket fiddles, and the donkey brays and the pony neighs, and the old gray badger sighs. Listen to the bass, it's the one on the bottom where the bullfrog groans, the hippopotamus moans and groans with a big to-do, and the old cow just goes moo. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now.
ox and the fox and the grizzly bear and the toady alligator and the hawk above, the sly old weasel and the turtle dove. All God's creature's got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now. All God's critters got a place in the choir.
Good morning. Obviously, I'm not Chris Carter. I would be honored to be Chris Carter, but I'm not. My name is Nasa Matt, and I'm a member of your Board of Trustees, and I use she and her pronouns. Each spring, my class of 1st through 3rd graders works on a community service project as a way to give back to our global community. Usually, it's a change drive where the class collects spare coins, counts them, and then decides how the collected money will be used to help the greater world. The class is always so excited to count the change collected for the day, but they get a little overwhelmed when they see the large pile of pennies, especially when they compare it to the small piles of quarters, nickels, and dimes. Groans of, "Oh, it's gonna take forever to count that," start surfacing around the classroom. They get even louder when they realize that 100 cents just adds up to $1, and there are hundreds and hundreds of pennies. But as they persist each day, the total of those pennies rise, and they become a significant contribution to our total and help us reach our goal of giving to others. Similarly, I'd like to invite you to give what you can, no matter how small, to our MDUUC community as we work to reach our goals. The ushers will now come forward to gratefully receive your offerings. Please join me in reciting our dedication for the offering. To the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
Thank you to Reverend Rodney, who prepared that video. In 1975, an obscure and radical writer, E.F. Schumacher, wrote a book called Small is Beautiful to counter what he called the rise of giganticism. Like Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, it was a classic text posing questions to people of a generation about the choices they were making, concerned about the growing focus on larger and larger economies. Fritz, as he was known to his friends, was interested in reclaiming our connections to each other and to our local areas. Any intelligent fool can make things bigger, more complex, and more violent, he wrote. It takes a genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. Since his death, some might argue that the world has grown smaller only because we've all crammed so much more into it, right? More people, more things. and an economy that is fueled completely on the idea of growth. In other words, fueled on the large. When I purchased a used copy of Small is Beautiful back in the mid-'80s, we couldn't conceive of how many things we would be owning just a couple decades later, owning and trading and then discarding and then shipping all over the world. And many of the consequences that Fritz Schumacher predicted have come true, including record occurrences of mental health issues among people, a lack of a sense of purpose among workers, which we see more and more in the questions that people are asking about why people aren't going back to the jobs that we need, but which brought them little satisfaction, in which they felt as if they were being treated just like parts of a machine. This is an economy that some might say now might literally be the death of us and our planet. But I get ahead of myself. I look forward every year to the challenge of the Bid for Love sermon. I hope some of you are out there scheming. It's only a couple weeks before you get a chance to bid on it for next year. And it occurs at our annual services auction, as was said earlier, and it'll occur this year on Saturday, November 6th. If you're new to our community, this is where we donate the skills we have and others bid on those, and it's a very important part of our budget. My skills being somewhat limited, I offer the chance to pick a topic for what I'm pretty good at doing, which is standing up here and talking about things that need to be talked about. And there's several people out there that have purchased this in the past, and it's always a wonderful service. Gives us the opportunity to use small animals and have small instruments like ukuleles in our service, right? So that's the theme, in case you didn't have that cup of coffee this morning, which I somehow missed and didn't get the connection. What do a van, a tiny house, and a backpack have in common? Well, all of them are ways that Peggy Kroll, our winning bidder from last year, has sought to remind herself of what is important. When we had lunch, which is, by the way, part of the Bid for Love sermon, item 2, it's a treat for me as well, Peggy told me that she was one of 6 who grew up in very small houses in Oakland, 1- and 2-bedroom houses. She never had her own bedroom, and the largest house she ever owned in her life was under 1,400 square feet, in which she raised her children. Living with the basics appeals to her, and she likes the way that her vacations focus her down, as she puts it. Not surprising that our Justice Council convener would have this orientation. Peggy knows that small is beautiful, as you can see from these slides from her van and her life. She said that she would allow her children to bring a friend when they camped, which is how she ended up with 6 children in the van when they were growing up. And as the residents of the new Youth Empowerment Tiny House Project Village near the Oakland Airport know, this small really is beautiful. This is a youth-initiated effort that brought tiny homes, and you will remember 2 of them sat for the longest time in our upper parking lot because the project was delayed by the pandemic. For some of these young people, it is the first home they have had off the street in years and years. One of the new residents is now in his 20s, and said that he has lived on the streets of Oakland almost exclusively since he was 11. There's also another small tiny house village that I see every week when I go to spend time with my precious grandchild, because there are people who took a lot that had been empty for decades and decided to build houses for families on it. Those houses now have solar panels and brightly painted murals like the ones on the houses that lived in our parking lot, and they are completely unauthorized as well. What a contrast to the norms of this nation are these tiny houses. Because you see, the United States, along with Canada and Australia, leads the world in terms of the size of our houses. It's interesting, right? All those former British colonizers, somehow. It's probably worth some speculation. In this nation, however, it is also matched by the size of our vehicles. Trucks and SUVs continue to be the most common vehicles that are owned in this nation. And these are vehicles which would never fit into the streets of Europe, which is one big change. And yet, as I learned last summer, weaving my way across the nation in my dog-filled van, one's spirit, as Peggy says, can settle down when the items are few and the routine is simple. Small is beautiful. And that includes the small actions that we can take to build understanding. The Dalai Lama has made climate change a priority for his spiritual leadership. Peggy shared some of his words earlier. He has especially stressed the need to embrace one another as human beings and as part of a human family as we face this time of climate change, for else he fears it will be a time when the divisions among us grow larger. He has especially stressed that we can treat one another with compassion. He writes, "We need a revolution of compassion based on a warm-heartedness that will contribute to a more compassionate world with a sense of the oneness of humanity. The entire human family must unite to protect our common home." Small is beautiful. And yet many now scoff at the earnestness of those who recycle and think it's enough, especially because we know that the vast majority of our recycling now, unfortunately, is actually discarded for being contaminated and not clean enough. Though recycling is a small act, it's a good choice. It doesn't solve the problem, but perhaps it might, by recycling, remind you of the packaging that you buy, and so you buy different things. Perhaps it might remind you about what you eat, and so you buy things that you eat that are lower on the carbon footprint. Perhaps that might remind you of the huge contribution to the carbon footprint of global travel, and perhaps you might reduce your number of trips by 1 a year. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, space heating and air conditioning, though, is one of the largest contributors to the carbon footprint. And that, of course, is because we're heating and cooling these enormous houses. And that means more carbon in the atmosphere. The supersizing of our abodes does not bode well. There is another reason for us to remember that small is beautiful, and that is because we have a housing crisis in our nation, and it is beyond a crisis in our area, as we all know. It is both a general crisis and also generational. One of the sadnesses for me during these last couple years has been the way that people have quietly informed me that they are having to leave the area because they can no longer afford housing. Now, people leave the area for many reasons, but for many that is definitely a factor. It's what gets them thinking about it. And during the pandemic, more and more people just made that decision, that what was important to them was to be somewhere else where they could actually afford a little bit more space. We have a zoning that restricts or forbids tiny houses in many places, and that's something I think we need to think about. Zoning may actually be a relic from another time and something we need to radically rethink. Would tiny houses, for example, be a possibility for the growing number of California college students and working people who live in their cars? Some by choice, but others because they have no other alternative. Others live in tents, in the living room of apartments made for 3 or 4 people, which these days may house 7 or more. Thinking smaller in terms of housing would be a radical change. And what will we as a nation decide? We have, again, one of the largest sizes of houses in the world. And it's important to think about how we continue, whether it's about the size of our houses or that thing that we buy at Target that we're likely to throw away in a few months. The issue of waste and using and consuming things that we don't actually need in a right sizing of our lives is something we need to think about. There was a chilling clip released a few weeks ago on the international news that shows the literal mountains of used clothing exported from the United States that now can no longer be recycled into insulation and other products that they used to be because the fast fashion industry is designing them out of such shoddy materials that they disintegrate after just a few months and cannot be reused even for these other uses. So reemerging after the pandemic, we have much to think about what we really want and what we really need and what we truly, truly value. Is it a new outfit for every season in every week of the year, or is it to ensure that our children and our grandchildren will have an environment that sustains them and their children? I think the ghost of Fritz Schumacher, whose economics asked us to think about returning to a human scale, is something we truly need to embrace. And we need to think about how we do that here as a community as well. Perhaps this is the time when we realize that small really is beautiful. Maybe small, maybe smaller, maybe small-ish, but what is it that we can do to help contribute to this? It's important. Small changes might make it happen. I want to say that if you are not aware of the generational Gen Z activists around us, you should learn their names. You should follow their words. You should pay attention to what they're saying. In fact, right now, 21 of them from this nation, and they are an international community, much more connected than many of the rest of us. 21 of them, though, in this nation are suing our United States government for our failure to act on climate-related policy to date. They're saying we've waited too long, and it's beyond the time to adopt small things. They're asking for big change now. Because that's the thing, and here's the paradox. Small is beautiful, and this is where we get to hold those two truths in tension. We need to make those necessary small changes that we each can make, and we also need to be working for the larger changes that we have to make as a society as our time is running out. In Schumacher's day, environmentalists used to talk about how we had some decades to go. Now they're talking about years to make changes that we truly need to make. And just this week, President Biden's climate change agenda became a political football, getting tossed back and out, and looks like being sidelined because of the changes and divisions among us. It is long past time to act. Vic Barrett is a 22-year-old climate activist who has tattooed the number 370 on his arm, and he did this at a global climate change conference. He says, the 370 in the tattoo refers to a measurement in parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This was the level it was at when he was born in 1999. It's now more than 400 parts, which most scientists agree is a hazardous indication of human-made climate change. This is what Barrett says. The tattoo is a reminder to myself and to others that there are generations of young people who have been born into a world that we know is scientifically incapable of sustaining them. It's highlighting this unique experience of being a young person on this planet right now. Swedish climate and environmental activist Greta Thunberg denounced the world's so-called leaders last month at a speech at Italy's Youth for Climate Summit, accusing politicians of failing to act on climate change and describing their promises as 30 years of blah, blah, blah. In an impassioned speech on the podium, the 18-year-old Thunberg said that despite countries around the world vowing to meet ambitious targets, the climate crisis was continuing to escalate. Build back better, blah, 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 she said, referring to the words of President Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson in particular. The time has come to listen and to act. So let's take a breath, because small is beautiful, and there are things that we can do. And the small can inspire us to take the risks and make the bigger changes we need to make. What if all congregations in Contra Costa County were entitled to build, say, 3, or if you want to be Unitarian, even 1 tiny house on their property, if each one was allowed to do that? How would that at least provide a place for some of the people who now have no place? What if we continue our efforts here to think about how we reduce our dependence on fossil fuels? What if we think about how we install that electric charging station that some of us have been asking for? What if we look at the ways we can simplify what we're doing? I know that the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association is looking at whether or not we will ever return to in-person conferences, wondering if the carbon footprint is worth it for this kind of travel? What if almost every one of us in this congregation vowed to learn about what a small group of us has been working so hard on for the last year, which is the Walnut Creek Sustainability Week? Our Climate Action Committee, under the leadership of our member, Bob Joe, has designed this and is sponsoring this from October 24th to October 30th. I know that every one of us could volunteer, could show up for one of the many events that are being offered. I know I'm excited about leading conversations about climate despair here on the Wednesday night of that week, and I'm nervously excited about being the marshal of the bike parade on the last day. I actually haven't been on my bike in a while, so I'm going to have to do some preparation for that so I don't embarrass us. But some of you could come along and help me out in case I fall off and someone else needs to marshal the parade. The reality is this, that tiny houses make big changes in people's lives. That thinking down and allowing ourselves to connect with what is truly important to us, as we had to do over the last 2 years, and which we so easily are starting to forget now, makes a difference. And that our small voices united can send a message, as our young adults and youth are asking us to do, that says that we must now make those small sacrifices that allow us the big future that we desire. I want to thank Peggy for her inspiration for this service. You can thank her too as well, because it is important for us to remember that small is beautiful and that each of us can make a difference.
Rolling river god, little stones are smooth. Only once the water passes through. So I am a stone, rough and grainy still, trying to reconcile this river's chill. But when I close my eyes and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when the sunset comes, my prayer would be this one, that you might pick me up and notice that I am just a little smoother in your hand. Sometimes raging wild, sometimes swollen high, but never have I known this river dry. The deepest part of you is where I want to stay, and feel the sharpest edges wash away. And when I close my eyes and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when the sunset comes, my prayer would be just one, that you might pick me up and notice that I am. Just a little smoother in your hand, rolling river god, little stones are smooth only when the water passes through.
Let's take a moment before we extinguish our chalice and just thank all who have contributed to this service. And our thanks to Peggy for her inspiration. I want to also invite you to just take a moment, if you're here on campus, and look around and see the people that you are glad to be with. And if you are here, think about who is not here, and that includes our people that we're so grateful to have on the patio and in the Borton Hall, who we'll see in just a few minutes. But let's reach out and connect to the people we don't see here. And if you're watching us at home, you reach out too. Because we're going to close with the words of Lao Tzu, who said, "Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize that there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." So let us take the small pieces of inspiration that we may have found here and give them to a hurting world, and let us do so in the spirit of peace. If you are new to being on campus, we do recess during our postlude, so you will see that in a minute.